I never imagined my husband would write 3 words to his own mother that would end up destroying every version of our marriage I thought I understood. She can't know. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because this story gets a lot more complicated before it gets better. Let's get into it. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 36, I live outside Portland, Oregon, and until 8 months ago, I would have told you my marriage to my husband Mark was solid. Not perfect, no marriage is, but solid. We'd been together 9 years, married for 6, with one son, Noah, who'd just turned 5. Mark's mother, Diane, had never been easy. She was the kind of woman who called herself just being honest when she was actually just being cruel. She questioned how I raised Noah. She questioned my job as a marketing coordinator, always with some version of, "Is that really enough to support a family?" Mark used to defend me in the early years. Somewhere along the way, he stopped. I told myself that was normal too, that husbands get tired of playing referee between their wife and their mother. I didn't think it meant anything deeper. I was wrong. It started with small things. Mark began helping his mom with paperwork every other weekend. Then it became weekly visits, always alone, always vague when I asked what they'd actually done. Then Diane started asking me strange questions at family dinners. How much did I have saved? Was my name on the deed to our house? Did I know what Mark's income actually was now that he'd gotten his promotion? I remember sitting there, Noah coloring next to me, thinking, why does she need to know any of that? In February, Mark came home and told me his mother wanted to restructure some of the family finances for tax purposes and that he needed me to sign some paperwork. He said it so casually, like it was nothing, like he'd asked me to sign a permission slip for Noah's school trip. When I asked to actually read the documents first, he got irritated in a way I'd never seen from him. "It's just standard stuff, Em. Do you not trust me?" I signed it. I shouldn't have. But I did, because 9 years of trust doesn't disappear overnight, even when something feels off. 3 weeks later, I was setting up a new laptop for work and needed to transfer some old files from our shared family cloud account, the one we'd used for years to back up photos of Noah, tax documents, insurance papers. While I was searching for a folder, I noticed something strange. A folder labeled Family, Do Not Open on Shared Devices, last modified 2 days earlier, sitting right next to our vacation photos. I hesitated. I want to be honest about that. Some part of me knew that if I opened it, I couldn't unknow whatever was inside. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly uneasy for months, needed to know why my own husband was hiding something from me on an account I had just as much right to as he did. I clicked it open. Inside was a single email thread, forwarded from Mark's personal account into the shared drive, probably by accident, probably because he'd been distracted juggling 2 accounts on his phone. The subject line read, before we finalize with M. I opened it. The first message was from Diane. It read, "We need to move on this before the house refinance goes through. If Emily finds out what we're actually doing with her signature, she'll never sign it. We do this quietly or we don't do it at all." Mark's reply, 3 lines down, was 5 words long. Agreed. She can't know. I sat there staring at those 3 words for what felt like a full minute before I could even process what I was looking at. She can't know. Not, she doesn't need to worry about the details. Not, it's complicated to explain. She can't know. I scrolled up to see the rest of the thread, and my hands were actually shaking by the time I finished reading it. The refinance Mark had mentioned wasn't just refinancing our mortgage. According to the emails, Diane had convinced Mark to use the equity in our house, the house that was in both our names, to co-sign a loan for a business venture she was starting with her brother, my uncle-in-law Gary, who I'd met exactly twice in 9 years. The paperwork I signed in February wasn't standard tax stuff. It was a limited power of attorney, giving Mark authority to make financial decisions on shared assets without requiring my direct signature going forward, specifically for situations involving family financial restructuring. I'd signed away partial control of our house without knowing it. I didn't confront Mark that night. I know some people would have. But I've learned that when someone's been lying to you for months, The worst thing you can do is let them know you found out before you understand the full picture. So instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started documenting everything. I forwarded the entire email thread to my personal email, the one Mark didn't have access to. I took screenshots, timestamped, in case anything got deleted. Then I called my cousin Rachel, who's a real estate attorney in Seattle, and told her everything. Rachel was quiet for a moment before she said, "Emily, I need you to listen to me carefully. If they used a power of attorney obtained without full disclosure to move equity out of a house that's legally half yours, that's not just a family dispute. Depending on how this loan is structured, this could be financial fraud." I remember feeling like the floor had shifted under me. Fraud. Not a shady favor for his mom. Fraud. Rachel told me not to sign anything else, not to confront Mark yet, and to get a copy of the actual refinance paperwork before it was too late to stop it. So over the next 10 days, I became someone I didn't recognize, calm on the outside, quietly gathering everything I could. I accidentally left my laptop logged into the shared drive so I could check for updates. I asked Mark casual questions at dinner about how the refinance was going, watching his face for the tells I now knew to look for. Then, on a Tuesday night, Mark came home looking pale. He told me the refinance had hit a small snag. The bank needed additional verification because of a discrepancy in the power of attorney paperwork. He said it like it was a minor inconvenience. I asked, as calmly as I could manage, what kind of discrepancy. He hesitated. Then he said something that told me he had no idea how much I already knew. "It's nothing, just some paperwork mix-up with my mom's loan. You don't need to worry about it." I looked at him for a long moment. 9 years of marriage, and he was still saying the same thing his mother had written in that email. "You don't need to worry about it. She can't know." That's when I decided it was time to stop watching quietly and start moving. The next morning, I called the bank directly, not to stop anything, but to ask a very specific question Rachel had told me to ask: whether a co-owner of a property could formally revoke a limited power of attorney if they believed it was signed under false pretenses. The answer changed everything. Not just for the loan. For Diane's business. For Mark. And for a truth about our finances that Rachel warned me I still hadn't fully uncovered. The bank representative confirmed what Rachel suspected. As a co-owner of the property, I had the legal right to revoke the power of attorney immediately, in writing, which would freeze the refinance process entirely. But before I did that, Rachel asked me one more question that changed the direction of everything. "Emily, before you revoke it and tip your hand, do you actually know what Diane's business needs this loan for? Because if she's already spent money she doesn't have, freezing this now might not be enough. You need to know exactly what you're dealing with." So I did something I hadn't planned on. I asked Mark, gently, over dinner, if his mom could use some help organizing the business paperwork, since I used to work adjacent to finance in my old job. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did have relevant experience. Mark looked relieved, actually grateful, and set up a call between me and Diane the next day. Diane, thinking I was there to help her, not investigate her, was disarmingly open. Over that call, I learned the business, a boutique property staging company she was starting with Gary, already had over $60,000 in unpaid vendor invoices and a signed lease on a commercial space Diane couldn't currently afford without the refinance money. She'd been counting on our home equity as the only way to keep the whole thing from collapsing before it even launched. She had no idea I was quietly taking notes the entire time. That night, I sent everything to Rachel. The invoices Diane had mentioned, the lease details, the full picture. Rachel confirmed something I already feared. If the refinance had gone through and the business failed, as co-owner of the house, I could have been held partially liable for defaulted business debt tied to our home equity. Debt I never agreed to and never knew existed until 3 weeks earlier. I revoked the power of attorney the next morning, in writing, sent through certified mail to both the bank and our mortgage lender, with a copy to our joint attorney. Under Rachel's guidance, I made sure the revocation was airtight, citing the original document's failure to disclose the true purpose of the loan. The refinance collapsed within 48 hours. That's when Mark finally found out that I knew, not because I told him, but because the bank contacted him directly asking why his wife had filed a formal revocation. He came home that night, and for the first time in months, he looked genuinely scared, not annoyed, not dismissive. Scared. I didn't yell. I just placed my laptop on the table, opened to the email thread, and let him read his own words back to himself. Agreed. She can't know. He didn't have an excuse. There wasn't one that made sense. He tried anyway, something about not wanting to stress me out, about handling it so I wouldn't have to worry. I told him the truth. He hadn't protected me from stress. He'd protected his mother from consequences, using my house, my name, and my trust to do it. Here's the twist neither of us saw coming. 2 weeks later, Gary, Diane's own brother and business partner, filed a complaint against Diane, revealing that she'd used a similar tactic with him months earlier, quietly signing him onto liabilities for the business without full transparency, the same way she tried to do with our house. Diane wasn't just willing to deceive me. She'd done it before, to her own brother, and gotten away with it until it happened to someone who knew to ask the right questions. Mark and I are still married, but barely, and only because we're in counseling and he's finally seeing his mother for who she actually is. He no longer manages any shared finances alone. Every account, every document, every decision now requires both our names and both our signatures, no exceptions. Diane hasn't spoken to me since the refinance collapsed. I'm told that's mutual. I think about that email sometimes. 3 words that were supposed to keep me in the dark ended up being the exact reason I found the light switch. If you were in my position, would you have stayed as calm as I did or confronted him the moment you found that email? Let me drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't like this video and subscribe for more real stories like this one, and I'll see you in the next one.